Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay connected with our latest stories. It was an ordinary Wednesday, one of those days where time seems to blur into the next. I had my coffee in hand, settled into my desk, and drifted into the familiar rhythm of checking emails, replying to messages, and managing tasks that never seemed to end. At 43, life had become a routine I had grown comfortable with. My days followed a predictable pattern: work, friends, and a life that, while safe, had started to feel like it lacked the spark of adventure. But then, that afternoon, something happened that shattered my comfort zone. Something I could never have anticipated. The phone rang. An unknown number appeared on the screen, and I almost let it go to voicemail, as I always do. But something urged me to pick it up. "Hello?" I answered, my voice betraying a hint of caution that wasn't usual for me. "Hi, is this Sarah Turner?" came the voice on the other end. Smooth, professional, and just familiar enough to make my pulse quicken. I froze for a moment, my mind scrambling for a sense of familiarity. Then my heart skipped a beat when I realized who it was. "Yes, speaking," I replied. "This is Mark Johnson, your boss. How are you today?" Mark, my boss at the marketing firm, where I'd spent the past 12 years. I had never expected a call from him, let alone one that made my heart race. I hadn't realized how much I had been seeking change until that very moment. "I'm good. Just working through the usual stuff. How about you, Mark?" I said, trying to sound nonchalant. There was a pause on the other end, an almost imperceptible shift, the sound of papers rustling, maybe fingers tapping against a desk. Something in the way he hesitated made my stomach twist. It wasn't just business as usual. There was an underlying tension. "I'm doing well, Sarah, but listen, I wanted to talk to you about something important." Important? My stomach did a flip. We had just wrapped up a big project, and it wasn't time for performance reviews. Why was he calling me? My mind raced, all sorts of questions flooding my thoughts, but none of them reassuring. "Is everything okay?" I asked, suddenly feeling an odd lump in my throat, a tension creeping up my spine. There was a chuckle on the other end, but it wasn't light-hearted. It was taut, almost too measured. "Everything's fine, don't worry. Actually, it's better than fine. I think you'll be pleased to hear this." I exhaled, trying to calm the rising anticipation in my chest. Was this a promotion? An exciting new opportunity? A new challenge? "Okay," I said, my voice a little shaky. "What's going on?" "Well, Sarah, we've been looking at your performance over the past year, and I have to say you've really exceeded expectations. I have something to offer you, something I think you might be interested in." I felt a strange excitement build inside me. This wasn't just a routine conversation. It was something more, something that might change everything. "Go on," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah, how would you feel about taking on a new role in the company? One that's a bit more exclusive?" Exclusive. My heart skipped a beat. A new role, something more. For the first time in a long while, I felt the stirrings of curiosity. I had been comfortable in my position, but this idea, it stirred something deep inside me. "What do you mean by exclusive?" I asked, my voice steady despite the racing thoughts. He chuckled again, this time with a warmth that felt more genuine, though still edged with an air of mystery. "Well, I can't go into too many details just yet, but this opportunity would put you in the spotlight. You'd be representing the company on a new project that could really take your career to the next level. It would involve a lot of travel, meetings with high-level clients, and of course, you'd be working directly with me." My heart raced at the thought. Was this real? Was I really being offered something that could break the monotonous cycle I had been living in? "Wow," I breathed out. "That sounds amazing." Mark's voice softened, and I could hear the sincerity in it. "It is, and I believe you're ready for it, Sarah. You've been with us for a long time, and I believe this is the next step for you. But before I go any further, I want to make sure it's something you actually want to do. It's a big commitment. It comes with a lot of responsibility." It was a moment of choice, a moment that made me realize how deeply we, as individuals, crave growth and change, even when we don't always recognize it. Life, in its stillness, can often feel like a gentle current that carries us forward. But there are moments, like this one, where the current shifts, inviting us to take the leap into unknown waters. The decision to embrace change, to face the unknown, is one of the most powerful choices we can make in our lives. And as I sat there, absorbing his words, I realized that this call was not just an opportunity. It was a call to redefine what I believed was possible in my life. I won't lie, it's not an easy path. As I leaned back in my chair, processing Mark's words, a mixture of excitement and nervousness surged within me. A part of me was eager for the challenge, yet another part hesitated, unsure of the sacrifice that would come with it. It was a lot to digest, and yet, when had I ever backed away from something that would push me beyond my limits? When had I ever turned down the chance to evolve? What kind of commitment are we talking about? I asked, my voice steady, despite the uncertainty swirling inside me. Boris took a deep breath, almost as if bracing for something heavier, before responding. Well, it's going to require a lot of your time, Sarah. There will be personal sacrifices, and I need someone I can trust completely for this. There's no room for second guessing. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. The stakes were high. I could feel that much in every word he spoke. But there was something within me, a quiet drive, a flicker of desire for growth, or perhaps the sheer exhilaration of being recognized, that nudged me forward. I understand. I'm interested, I said, my voice unwavering, though my mind was still racing. There was no turning back from this, not anymore. Mark paused again, his silence stretching as if he were carefully weighing what to say next. When he spoke again, his tone took on a sense of gravity, almost conspiratorial. "Good," he said. "Then I have one more thing to tell you." His voice dropped lower, and the stillness on the other end of the line felt almost eerie. For a moment, I thought I had imagined the pause, but then he spoke again, his words slow, deliberate. "Before we proceed, Sarah, I need to be honest with you about something." My body stiffened as I sat up straighter, instinctively gripping the phone tighter. This wasn't just about the job anymore. There was something else in his tone, something personal, something that hung in the air, palpable and unsettling, though I couldn't yet understand why. "Of course," I replied, my voice tight with anticipation. "What's going on?" He sighed, but not like someone burdened by work or decisions. No, this sigh felt heavier, as if it carried a weight he had been bearing for a long time. "Sarah," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I've been following your work closely, more closely than you probably realize, and I've noticed something about you, something special." His words caught me off guard. I had worked hard, yes, but I had never considered myself to be anything extraordinary. I was just another person doing their job, nothing more, nothing less. But the sincerity in his voice, the weight behind his words, made me stop and reconsider everything I had believed about myself. "I appreciate the praise, but," I started, about to downplay his words, but he cut me off gently. "No, Sarah, you need to hear me out," he said, his voice thick with meaning. "I don't mean this in a professional sense alone. I'm talking about something more." My stomach churned again, that familiar knot of anxiety returning. "More?" I echoed in my mind, barely able to keep my voice steady. The situation was starting to feel strange, like a door opening to an unknown space I wasn't sure I was ready to step through. Was he suggesting something beyond just a career opportunity? Was I misreading this? My heart began to race, and with it, the old familiar feeling of vulnerability crept in, a sensation I hadn't experienced in years. "Yes," he said, almost too softly. "I've been working with you for so long, Sarah, and I've come to realize that you're more than just an employee. I see potential in you, not just in the office, but beyond that." His words seemed to hang in the air, challenging my every perception of who I was. Was I just another cog in the machine, or was there more to me than I had allowed myself to see? "Mark, I started again, trying to piece together his cryptic words, but he continued, his voice softening as if he were confessing something deep, something he had kept hidden for a long time. "I know this might sound strange, but I've developed a deep respect for you. not just because of your work ethic, but because of who you are as a person. The way you carry yourself, your values, your integrity. There's something about you that makes me believe we could accomplish more together, if you understand what I mean. And in that moment, everything seemed to slow down. His words hung in the air like a riddle, challenging everything I had known about professionalism and boundaries. Was this admiration, or was it something else? Was I reading too much into it? Was he crossing a line I hadn't seen coming? I didn't know what to say. My mind was in a haze, torn between the part of me that wanted to dismiss his words and the part that felt drawn to them, like a moth to a flame. There was warmth in his voice, and though my mind screamed to resist, another part of me felt an undeniable pull, a pull to understand what was behind his words. I know it's unexpected, Mark continued, his tone softening further, and I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now. It was then that I realized this moment, this conversation, was more than just a job offer. It was a test of vulnerability. It was about how we view ourselves, how we define our worth, and how we choose to respond to opportunities that don't just ask us to grow professionally, but to transform on a deeper, personal level. What happens when we're called to rise not just in our careers, but in our own self-awareness? What happens when we're invited to see the potential in ourselves that others have already seen? It was a moment of profound reflection, a chance to decide what kind of person I wanted to be, and how far I was willing to go to become that person. He continued, his tone, still gentle, but tinged with a hint of urgency. I just needed you to know how I feel, and well, I hope you might feel the same way, even if it's just a little bit. My heart was pounding in my chest. Now I felt like I was being asked to make a choice, but the weight of his words had left me stunned. I had been flattered by his praise. Yes, but this was different. This was personal, and it felt like I was stepping into unfamiliar territory. I'd been in relationships before, but this wasn't something I had prepared for Mark. I started, but once again, I couldn't finish the thought. What could I possibly say to that? How could I navigate this delicate situation, especially with him being my boss? I know this isn't easy, Mark said, sensing my hesitation. I fought long and hard about how to approach you, but I had to be honest. I didn't want to hide my feelings any longer. I let out a breath. I didn't know I had been holding, trying to compose myself. The office, the job, the responsibility, it all felt so far away now. All that remained was the weight of his words, the way he saw me, the way he made me feel seen. I don't know what to say, Mark. I finally whispered, my voice, soft but filled with uncertainty. This is a lot to take in. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, and for a moment I wondered if I had said too much, but then Mark's voice broke through the stillness. His tone lighter now, as though he was giving me the space I needed. I'm not asking you to rush, Sarah. Just think about it. Take your time, and when you're ready, let me know. I let out a shaky breath, trying to steady my emotions. Okay, I said quietly, my mind swirling. I'll think about it. Mark seemed to sense my hesitation, and I could almost hear the faint smile in his voice. I knew you would, and no matter what you decide, I'll respect it. I just wanted you to know where I stand. As the call ended, I sat there in a daze. What had just happened? Was I being swept up in something I couldn't control? Or had I just been given a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to grow both personally and professionally? I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I had been changed in that moment. Something inside me had awakened, and no matter what I decided, I could never go back to the person I was before that call. The days after that call passed by in a blur, each one more chaotic than the last. I went through the motions of my daily routine, meetings, emails, deadlines, but everything felt different. My mind kept returning to that conversation with Mark, replaying his words over and over. I couldn't escape the question that had taken root in my mind. What did he really mean? What did I want? I found myself caught between two worlds. One where I was just a 43-year-old woman trying to balance work responsibilities and personal life, and another where I was someone he saw as something more. I couldn't ignore the feelings that had started to bloom within me. The respect I'd always had for Mark, now laced with curiosity, and something else I couldn't fully identify. But as the days passed, something shifted inside of me. I realized I had been running away from the very theme I feared the most, the idea of stepping outside my comfort zone. I'd spent so many years being practical, following the expected path, but maybe it was time to take a leap to embrace the unknown. After all, what was the worst that could happen? A chance at something new, something real. Was worth the risk, wasn't it? I decided I needed to speak with Mark, face to face. A phone call wasn't enough to unravel everything that had been set in motion. I needed clarity, and I knew I could only get it by confronting my feelings. Head on. I called his office and asked if he had time to meet. The moment he agreed, my stomach twisted with nerves. What if I said the wrong thing? What if this changed everything between us for good? The next morning, I arrived at the office early, pacing outside in the parking lot, taking deep breaths to steady myself. When I finally walked into his office, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Mark was sitting at his desk, but he stood up as soon as he saw me. His smile was warm, reassuring, but there was a slight edge to it, as though he too had been waiting for this moment. "Sarah," he said softly, his eyes meeting mine. "I'm glad you could make it." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about." I began, my voice steady, despite the flutter in my chest. "And I need to be honest with you. I'm not sure where this will lead, but I can't ignore how I feel. You've given me a lot to think about, Mark, and I've realized that what I want is to take that risk." Mark's eyes softened, and for the first time I saw a flicker of vulnerability in his expression. It was as though he had been holding his breath, waiting for my response, and now that it had come, he allowed himself a brief moment of relief. "You mean it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my heart pounding. "Yes, I mean it." There was a long silence as we stood there, the weight of the moment settling between us. It felt like a turning point, a moment of pure, unspoken understanding. And then Mark stepped closer, his hand reaching out tentatively, as if testing the waters. It wasn't a grand gesture, but there was something deeply meaningful in the way he held my gaze, waiting for me to make the next move. I took a deep breath and took a step forward. The tension between us, once thick with uncertainty, now felt like a bridge leading us towards something neither of us could fully predict. But in that moment, it didn't matter. We were both willing to step into the unknown together, Sarah. Mark said, his voice a little more certain. "Now, I never wanted to pressure you. I just needed you to know how I felt." "I know," I replied softly, "and I'm glad you did." His smile grew genuine. "Sisengam. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I'm willing to find out, if you are." I nodded, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. Whatever this was, whatever it would become, I was ready, not just for the professional risks, but for the personal discovery that came with taking a chance on someone who saw me for more than just my work, for all that I was. As we stood there, a mutual understanding passing between us, I realized that the real journey wasn't just about stepping into a new chapter with Mark. It was about embracing the uncertainty of life and allowing myself to be vulnerable, to connect, to grow, and to discover parts of myself that I had hidden for too long. The weeks that followed weren't always easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when the line between professional and personal felt blurry. But through it all, Mark and I maintained a mutual respect that anchored us. Our relationship, whether it remained professional or evolved into something more, was built on a foundation of trust and understanding. And for once in my life, I wasn't afraid of where it would take me. As I walked out of his office that day, I felt a quiet sense of pride. I had made a decision that was mine and mine alone. And that, more than anything, made me realize just how much I had grown. This was my story, one of vulnerability, honesty, and the courage to step into the unknown. And whatever came next, I knew I was ready.